It's time now for Quick Take by the Numbers. It's where we give you the numbers that tell the story. This afternoon's number is 15.5%. Rents in all New York City boroughs, analyzed by StreetEasy, showed the fastest year-over-year decline in January in at least a decade, falling 15.5% in Manhattan and 8.6% in Brooklyn and Queens. While the pace of new listings has slowed compared with its peak in the fall, there are still twice as many rentals available in Manhattan and Brooklyn as there were a year ago, and nearly that many in Queens. The COVID-19 pandemic, of course, spurred many New York residents to move out of cramped apartments and into other places with lower taxes and maybe warmer weather. Others were forced out after losing their jobs. All of that has created the perfect opportunity for others to move to the city of their dreams and lock in rents that have reached the lowest level in a decade. Bloomberg Wealth reporter Miss Elena Agafopoulou joins me now from New York with more on this trend. Missy, it's great to see you from your apartment, I should say. We'll talk about that in just a second. Why is this the perfect time to move to the city? What sort of discounts are out there from landlords?
Yeah, Tim, it's actually really funny because I was on your show a couple of months ago and we were talking about this huge sort of exodus of people leaving New York City in search for cheaper apartments elsewhere and maybe states with lower taxes. And now a few months later, we're talking about exactly the opposite. A lot of people left the city, leading to this record low vacancy rates and sort of massive inventory of apartments available. And landlords really struggled to fill that void. And so started offering up a lot of perks for people to come into the city and lock in some apartments. And those include, more room to negotiate your rent, more free months of rents, maybe perks like free parking. The point is that the people that have wanted to move to New York for a really long time really found sort of this perfect opportunity to do so. And that was clearly a byproduct of the pandemic.
So the big question is timing, right? Like, how long do these good deals last? Because if they're starting to attract people, then that means that landlords aren't going to have to keep these incentives going for very long. So how long is the market going to look like this?
Honestly, experts say not for long. So if you're looking to move to New York City, you better do it sooner rather than later. I mean, data that we looked at indicated that while median rent prices across all boroughs are low, the inventory available is really starting to decrease at the same time that the number of signed leases are starting to increase. So in January alone, inventory has decreased by almost 40% since the height of the pandemic. And so that sort of makes sense, if you look at the fact that the city is slowly starting to bring back indoor dining, museums are open again. There's also, the vaccine in the horizon. And so people really expect that the warmer the weather gets and that the more vaccines are sort of reaching people, the more these deals are not going to be available.
You and our colleagues spoke to several people who had made the move, some across the country, to New York City. Tell me about Jorge Garcia, who recently found a deal.
Yeah, so Jorge was one of those people who actually never left New York, but he got here a few weeks before the city went on lockdown, and he rented an apartment that, was in these pre-pandemic prices that were quite higher than what he gets now. And over the summer and through the year, he sort of saw units in his own apartment building slowly starting to hit the market for much lower rates than the ones that he had locked in. He asked for his landlord for a better price, and when he couldn't get one, he decided to move. And he actually is moving, this month. He got an apartment for the same price range that he was paying before, but he got a lot more perks from it. So before he was living in a fifth floor walk-up in the East Village. Now he got, an apartment with an elevator and a gym and a rooftop, a dishwasher, and an indoor washer dryer unit, which we all know are big luxury in New York City.
Yeah, in New York, those are like unicorns. What about when it comes to Claire Smith, who moved from Los Angeles? Why did she move to New York City in the middle of a pandemic?
Claire is this 24-year-old girl that I spoke to who said she sort of always envisioned her 20s in New York City. And I think, a lot of young folks feel the same way. They want to move to this city that offers so much possibility. And she really had been looking at rents on StreetEasy for a really long time, but really wasn't able to sort of make that jump because it was just too expensive. And now this year, she basically was looking at rents. She noticed they were going down and she was able to actually lock in an apartment in the West Village of New York City, which is one of the most expensive neighborhoods. And she moved here with a roommate. She got a really good price for it, $3,500. She got 1 month free rent, so it brought it down to $3,200, which, again, is quite the steal for a neighborhood like the West Village. And she's here and she's saying, it's not the New York City that maybe people remember it being, but she's confident that's going to bounce back. And she still says that she's enjoying, going to museums or indoor dining, and sort of made the point that that energy that New York offers for a lot of young kids who want to move here is still very much here for her.
Okay, so I was reading this story, Missy, and I was thinking to myself, this is so funny because Missy is one of those people who moved to New York City in the middle of a pandemic. You're in your new apartment right now. Take us through the decision-making process. What brought you to New York City in the middle of a pandemic, and how good of a deal did you get, if you don't mind me asking?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, it is really funny. The story really, the timing is great because I was one of the people that also moved here. I mean, I did so for professional reasons, but I was very lucky because I got a COVID deal. You're looking at it right now. I live in the East Village. I was able to secure an apartment for a very good price. And one thing that I think was really interesting about my apartment was that, it was owned by a family that had been living here for 30 years, and they decided to leave the city because of the pandemic. And I think that had it not been for coronavirus, this apartment would have actually hit the market. These people, I don't think, would ever have let it go because this was their home. But because of the sort of health concerns that they had because of the pandemic, they put it on the market. And so that was, I think, one of the things that I noticed when I moved here was apartments that may not have hit the market beforehand did so. And we were able to snatch one up, and we're very happy here.
Well, looking forward to the housewarming party post-vaccine at the new spot. Mr. Lene Gafapulu, thanks as always for your time. Well, coming up, 6 books from iconic author Dr. Seuss are being ceased from further publication. We're going to discuss in 2 minutes. This is Take a Break.